Alrighty. Have you noticed your stress levels continually rising these days, no matter how you try to calm down? And the answer is in your body, believe it or not. The answer, we don't look there, but that's where it is. We think it's in our head. We think it's the thoughts we think, but it's really mostly in your body. Ever thought you were in a project and you were all in, all set to go, but in retrospect, you realized that you had one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas? Well, let me introduce you to the brake, the foot on the brake, and that is the unconscious mind. And the foot on the gas is the conscious mind. We have all sorts of ideas that we want to do. Our conscious mind is the ego, and it has ideas about where we're going to go with it, and we don't know how to get our unconscious on board. So we overcome our greatest struggles by asking the body what it needs to heal. So what is it that I do, and why is it so easy? Well, I'm doing a form of acupressure. I'm trained in a few different modalities. I actually teach in 3 of them. And it's the language of the body. It's connecting into, in essence, traditional Chinese medicine. So first off, we live in an emotionally avoidant society, and you may think that you've been feeling negative emotions, particularly since COVID started. But let me tell you the truth here. What you have been most likely doing your whole life is trying to avoid feeling the emotions that you feel. And what that does is it prevents the body from learning. Now, we think that all of our learning is done with our conscious mind, but truthfully, what is happening is 24/7, the unconscious is in charge. And when we shove those emotions down, we end up not being able to learn the emotional message. The intellectual learning is an add-on much more recently than the emotional learning. The emotional learning is never going to be let go by the body because it's a survival mechanism. We need it as a social species in order to try to learn the lessons that we've screwed up on so that we can, if there's a famine, we're one of the ones that get chosen to be fed. And also, when we make a habit of shoving those emotions down, these things are neurochemicals. They're a type of neuropeptide, and they lodge in the body. And in quantity, they are inflammatory, and inflammation leads to disease. So that gives us health as our one reason to change and start to pay attention to what our unconscious is trying to learn. But another reason is performing better in work and school and in testing and in life. So our brain is either engaged to learn and work or take a test, or it's in fight or flight mode. It can't do both well. And for people who we tend to have we always have a dominant hemisphere. The dominant hemisphere, if we're left brainers, we're lucky when we take a test because that academic, the symbolic language is going to be more online. The other hemisphere that's not our dominant one doesn't completely go to sleep, but it sure feels like it if we're a right hemisphere dominant person and we go in to take a test. And we may or may not be triggered in a particular test-taking situation, but if we start to associate that sometimes that symbolic language isn't available, we can start to develop almost PTSD around test-taking, and it can get worse and worse. So stress or trauma can make infant-level patterns of behavior that are called primary reflexes reactivate. They can also reactivate from accidents. So if you fall down and hurt yourself, if you get into a car accident, all of that reactivation drags down our processing speed and our reasoning power. And it also, so we want to spend more time in the cortex, and instead we're having reactions to things. We're reactive instead of proactive, and it's happening in the emotional brain and in this brainstem. And it's really good at telling us that it's thinking rationally, but really it's like the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's kind of taking over. And if you ever notice like these cycles where your righteous indignation builds at how you were treated over a particular instance, that's an example of the emotional and primitive brain being activated. So now most of us are carrying some past traumas with us from our childhoods, whether it was generated at home or at school. And these traumas can lead to beliefs that we don't deserve success or that it's not safe to be seen. For example, if we come from a very poor family and we see that other people have so much more than we do, maybe they even have more food security than we do, or they have more access to things like vacations and whatnot, it's child logic here, right? Well, they have that, so in some way they must be good and I must be bad. And so then underneath the surface, the unconscious is always active. Those beliefs are simmering and impacting how well we do in our adult life. So, as I said, the unconscious never sleeps, and it's always on the lookout for danger, trying to give us more of what we've survived because it knows we can survive it. So logically, the conscious mind doesn't want any more of the bad stuff, right? But unconsciously, it's familiar, it's been survivable, and it assumes that it's continually going to be survivable, even if we're running ourselves into the ground with stress. So as you can see, the subconscious, its goal is to, and its function is to make sure that we have a continuous, what's the word? A continuous experience. So there's a limit to how much better we can do than childhood, and really how much worse that we can do from childhood. So this is all great if we had a great childhood and we're trying to like be entrepreneurs or change jobs and be successful. But if we had what are called adverse childhood experiences, which are things like divorce, death, somebody in our family having job loss, and injuries, that kind of thing, these kinds of beliefs are potentially keeping us from that success that we need. So we can learn, though, the emotional lessons that keep us, that are keeping us in limbo with these types of kinesiologies, and some of which I have helped actually develop. So why did I get involved with this? Because I grew up with horrendous PTSD from being in a military family. My dad was an active duty combat vet, and he was serving Vietnam War when now, because of that trauma and my unconscious working to keep me in a safe, survivable environment, I married someone who continued it. And he was very skilled at a type of narcissistic behavior called coercive control, which means when somebody can't, when you can't please somebody and everything is invested in pleasing someone, and you try harder and harder, what ends up happening is you're being gaslit, your adrenals are exhausted, and you have often adrenal fatigue, and it might go into things like chronic fatigue and other autoimmune, which happened to me. So I have recovered from that, recovered from being enabling a relationship like that, and recovered my health. I had actually, my goal was, because of my illness, to become a Southern historical fiction writer, and that's what I started off in, and I actually have been in a writer's residency working on that. And then along the way, I realized, as I was kind of taking notes on all this stuff, that, hey, this is really something that I should write about. And so I wrote the health book. And then I thought, well, I can't afford to hire somebody to come and show this stuff, so I should get trained in it. And then it kind of worked out into, oh, I'm good at this and I should also do it. So that's my accidental road to becoming a specialized kinesiologist and an educational kinesiologist. As far as what I would love help with, the pandemic definitely disrupted my business. It is something that I can do online, but I did have more of a local following. I do have some people that I have helped around the world, and that's lovely. So I would love help with expanding that back. And I'm also working on things like SEO to try and increase my website's ability to be seen. But certainly any kind of suggestions around that. And it works whether you believe in it or not, is all I can say. I have a lot of satisfaction helping people who don't believe in it, and then they get great test results. So the other thing is, though, that I would dearly love to partner with a nonprofit in getting grant money to develop a pilot project to show what it can do for people who aren't in a position to afford my services. I think it would be wonderful to be able to offer group sessions to people to supplement what other terrific services are being offered in the mental health service profession. It is absolutely not psychotherapy in any way, but it does pair very well with it because it's helping with somatic healing. And I just want to thank you all for allowing me to present today. And I'm happy to demonstrate an acupressure hold if anybody's interested, and also to show you ways your body's trying to talk to you if anyone's interested. And I'll turn the floor back to you folks.